They were young but brave in their fight against inequality, beaten but trained not to hit back.
Yeah, tonight in her special report, Freedom Riders, Sabrina Wilson talks to 4 survivors of the perilous rides whose activism got started in New Orleans.
Canal Street, a place where courage was on display during the Jim Crow era. Courage that ultimately forced change in America. In 1960, young blacks and whites challenged segregated Canal Street lunch counters. Jerome Smith, a Southern University Baton Rouge student, was one of them.
I was definitely involved that's the first time I went to jail.
They were part of CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, demonstrations Dorotha Smith took part in.
While a member of the NAACP Council, CORE had recently organized in New Orleans, and they had just started their first sit-in at Woolworths and McCrory and boycott.
As did Dave Dennis and Claude Reese.
My picketing at the McCrory's ended up my getting arrested for the first time.
Both Woolworth and McCrory's.
Activism and arrests that prepared them for something more perilous.
No question, right there. Every day prepared you for the next one.
A new day is fighting Jim Crow victory.
May 4th, 1961, CORE launched Freedom Rides on a Trailways and Greyhound bus to test segregation on interstate buses and terminals after the U.S. Supreme Court outlawed mandated separatism.
The Freedom Ride movement just was an extension of the historical civil rights movement.
A journey into the Deep South where danger was anticipated. On May 14th, Mother's Day, it came. A mob bombed the Greyhound bus in Anniston, Alabama. Riders on the other bus beaten.
And they were supposed to end here in New Orleans. But as you know, that never happened.
What I consider to be the really brave people, or the people who were on the bus that was burned, they were almost murdered there.
Attorney General Robert Kennedy urged a cooling off period.
The young people dug in that Jerome and others, we're going to continue this ride.
An emergency conclave convened in Montgomery, Alabama, which included New Orleans CORE members.
I'm overwhelmed by meeting all these great people I've read about, Martin Luther King, Abernathy.
Dr. King come touch me on my shoulder because he had heard of my determinations in other parts of the South.
Dennis, a Dillard University student on scholarship, wasn't eager to join the ride.
There was this thing saying there's not enough space in this room for both God and fear. And so before I knew it, I was jumping up and I'm going. So I ended up on the first bus.
May 24th, 1961, buses left Montgomery for Jackson, Mississippi. The New Orleans CORE members, now Freedom Riders.
You had people out there with pitchforks on the side of the road, just line up, and trucks and cars. But we had a lot of security, the National Guard.
Connecting to Gandhi, connecting to some of the Dr. King's writing, and then looking into the lives of others who had put themselves up in terms of that suffering.
We ended up, when we got to Jackson, Mississippi, there was a lineup of police on both sides of the door when you come out the bus that led right into the white waiting room. And then they escorted us out. We went right back and backed up to the other door were paddy wagons. And we went right into the paddy wagons.
They and others like John Lewis ended up at Parchman Prison.
Okay, I'm alive. That was the first thing you had to deal with this, because we didn't expect it, for that to happen,
62 years later at Hubbard Mansion B&B, Dennis recounts that experience.
We tried the hunger strikes, we did all this kind of stuff.
Eventually, they were released.
Them ladies was tough. Females.
The ladies were tough.
Beyond.
It wasn't over. Others trained at New Zion, the very church where the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was founded.
Reverend Davis's church, they brought me back from jail to be a part of the training sessions there.
Mississippi was still in the picture.
Jerome say, we need to go to Macomb. So Okay. So we went to Macomb.
There,
All hell broke loose. They took Tom Valentine off of the stool and threw him on the ground, and he would bounce up like that. They chased George Raymond. At that point, Jerome motioned to Alice and I to come sit in the waiting room. They finally caught on that Jerome was part of the group when he did that. And they started beating Jerome. They beat him with brass knuckles. And I was singing in my head, "We are not afraid."
were you beaten at that time?
Not like the guys. I was kicked in the back by the same guy who beat Jerome with the brass knuckle. Alice was kicked. And they started chasing us. And I was running behind Jerome.
Once in the safe area, she says Jerome Smith bellowed,
"Get Bobby Kennedy on the phone." So he started calling out these numbers. So I took my little pad out and wrote it down. Say, "Bob Kennedy." I say, "I need to speak to Attorney General Bobby Kennedy." He say, "This is he." And my eyes went like, "Ooh." And I say, "I'm calling for Jerome Smith." He said, "I'm aware of the situation. There are FBI agents out front waiting to take you back to New Orleans." Being all of 18 and a half years old, I say to Attorney General Bobby Kennedy, "Oh, no, they won't. We're going back to New Orleans the way we came, by bus." And I gave the phone to Jerome.
Headlines blared, New Orleans Freedom Riders' names in print.
And I had received some blows, but that had happened on the same side of my head.
Effects that linger.
It's like I'm on this stick, right? And that comes from an injury. I still suffer with the headaches.
This used to be Flint Goodrich Hospital, a place where black doctors were trained and practiced. And according to Dave Dennis, a place where injured Freedom Riders could be treated.
They couldn't get medical care. And so they had to get them out of those places.
Claude Rees and Dorotha Smith attended Suno. His ride came later in '61.
I really believe that that telephone call that Dodie told you about to Bobby Kennedy's office probably, was a factor in the way, Macomb behaved when we showed up about 3 or 4 days later. Right,
So you weren't attacked?
No, we were not, physically attacked.
First when Julia come out the Seminole Project, she and Doris Castle used to have the whole prison singing.
Freedom Riders photos in the Treme Community Center where Jerome Smith motivates kids.
I think about how blessed I've been to come through this.
I felt as long as I was with the group, I was not afraid of nothing.
Several times I done feared for my life, but the moment dominates your commitment to the moment, and that enables you to carry on.
We didn't know anything about PTSD. So it was many, many years later that I realized that I went through a hard time mentally.
One of the things about Southern, it made me cry when they put me out of school because I knew I was doing the right thing.
Sacrifices that led to the 1964 Civil Rights Act.
If you had to do it again, would you?
Yes. Yes.
I won't hastily say yes, but I cannot say no to that.
I hope so. And I put it that way is because I didn't know I was going to do that then.
No justice, no peace.
The struggle, they say, isn't over.
I feel good and proud about what we did, but I'm not satisfied.
No.
Absolutely, positively not.
It takes different forms because that's not really controlled by us. The evil on the other side make us react.
I'm Sabrina Wilson, Fox 8 Local First.
When the Freedom Riders ended in December of 1961, 14 New Orleans Corps members had taken part. Dave Dennis went on to get a law degree and says as a Corps field secretary, he was with Medgar Evers an hour before he was assassinated. Jerome Smith says he does something every day to advance equality. Dorotha Smith Simmons worked for Preservation Hall and is one of the founders of the New Orleans Jazz Fest. And Claude Reese worked for former mayors Moon Landrieu and Dutch Morial, and then Sheriff Paul Valto.